Heading into its fifth week in cinemas, and Snow White has been measured, weighed, and found lacking. Compared to other cinematic train wrecks in recent years, it is coming up short of just about every single one of them, and it is going to go down as not just the worst flop of 2025, but perhaps of all time. I don't even think I'm being hyperbolic. Now, I was thinking back, earlier this year, prior to it hitting theaters, I thought that it was going to be bad. But then again, I was thinking it was going to land somewhere in, on, and around Captain Black Falcon America Man. I was thinking, 350. That would probably be, it would be bad. And it would be exceptionally awful, but there would at least be some spin from the media saying, oh, look at that. It made back its production budget. Don't mind any of the proper movie math on that. Hey, just listen and believe it's going to be totally fine. And then just try to usher Rachel Zegler off stage for at least a little while. Just try to run back the same playbook that they would with The Little Mermaid. But now that we have 5 full weekends in the books, we can properly assess this as just an enormous flop that does not measure up to anything else and winds up extremely lacking, because Disney's Snow White woes continue as controversial remake still has yet to reach $100 million at the US box office rather. And spoilers, it's not going to hit that mark, because now it's really starting to lose theaters, and it's just comparing it to other releases. It's just, it doesn't have the time. It's going to be on Disney Plus, and I'm sure Disney's going to have a way of saying, oh, it's the biggest release to hit Disney Plus this week of, I don't know what, the third week is the biggest release to come out in the third week of May on a Wednesday at 8 p.m. It's the biggest thing to ever happen in the year of 2025 this week at this time. Disney's live action Snow White reboot, starring Rachel Zegler as the titular Snow White and Gal Gadot as the evil queen, has seen its share of struggles since it debuted in theaters on March 21st. The film that had a mega budget of around $270 million. Spoilers, that's not true. And we're eventually going to get the tax receipts on that. So when it comes in somewhere between $350-400 million, you heard it here first. Thus far, the Mark Webb-directed Snow White has earned $84.5 million at the U.S. box office per Box Office Mojo. But yeah, I've actually got the breakdowns right here, because you can just simply pull up the numbers, which always has the more accurate numbers. And yeah, 84.6 after this past weekend, and well, you just really run it down, and after its 5th weekend, simply pulling in $1.2 million, and it's only in 1,650 theaters. It's a wrap. It is never going to hit $100 million domestically. It could, by hook or by crook, depending on how many theaters keep around. This film inch over 200 million internationally, but I really don't think so. I think it's gonna wrap up this week, and you might get to 95 million. You might get 195. You might get 196. But any higher than that, I just don't see it, man. I do not see it. And this is like really bad, okay? Because 1,650 theaters heading into the weekend, looking down at the daily breakdowns, and bro, it's done. It is cooked. I'm going to be flabbergasted if this thing does not get down to the 5-digit crew sometime this week. It could be for Monday. Depending on where they're at though, okay? Because Easter Monday is recognized in certain places, so that could be the only thing, just forestalling this until Thursday, but it'll very likely just hemorrhage even more theaters, as there's a couple of debuts coming out, and then especially next weekend, okay, the 2nd through the 4th, like this thing's going to be off streaming, and then by that point in time, the 45-day will come up, and we'll get some announcement that, hey, Snow White is heading to Disney Plus, like the 23rd or something like that. Okay, he's just I'd imagine they're probably going to time this so the week leading into Lilo and Stitch, May 23rd, which is also when Mission Impossible comes out. So again, I don't know, maybe if Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning underperforms, they'll be able to say, oh, Lilo and Stitch came in and it just totally trounced us. It's like, I don't know, maybe just make a good movie this time around, and it'll just end up overachieving. Or perhaps they're hoping for like a Lilo Impossible type effect. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're doing, but both of those films coming out on the same day, it's a recipe for success. We'll just have to see how that ends up playing out. But this story popped a couple of days ago at the beginning of the week, and it was kind of light on sources. So whenever I see stuff like this, and if I don't ever touch on a story or in a timely manner that you deem appropriate, and you're searching through social media and you see something that piques your interest, and it's like, wow, I can't believe that was in the news there, but I can't really remember it a couple days on. Whenever you see headlines like this, Disney is halting the production of live action remakes after the failure of Snow White at the box office. Whenever you see something like that that's so inflammatory, that makes a lot of sense, okay? Because haven't really heard that much about, other live action remakes that are still in the pike. You got the couple that are going to be coming out, like the previously mentioned Lilo and Stitch, and then towards the end of the year, which was probably a big reason why Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wasn't at stupid WrestleMania over the past weekend, it was because he's likely doing reshoots for the live action Moana that's coming out at the end of this year. So there are ones that are still in the pipeline, but in the long term, and if you remember from a couple of weeks ago, you also got this story that Tangled's live action movie, yes, hits the pause button, and you could kind of extrapolate that's because, Snow White ended up doing so poorly. But you could also think that there was probably a creative decision behind the scenes to, we really just can't cast Zendaya as Rapunzel. We just can't make that one work. Or Cynthia Erivo. It's like, I don't really know, man. But to just try to, mix all of that stuff up, because as you can see, just going back to this, where's your source on this one? Okay, like there's nothing to go on this. As much as you'd like to believe that Disney is finally going to turn off the sludge pipe, Lilo and Stitch is coming out at the end of May. It's not going to be a good film, but it's going to make a fuck ton of money. You can bank on that. But that doesn't, of course, detract from how colossal of a failure Snow White was, okay? But here's the thing, okay? Because of the success that Lilo and Stitch is going to bring, and that Moana live action is going to bring, and because, Disney owns so many things, Fantastic Four could be a fucking flop, and I very much hope it will be in July. Maybe it'll be good against all hope, but every time that one of those stupid actors flaps their gums, the less hope I have for that. It's already, of the big three that are coming out, I already know that, talking about it in July, I already know Jurassic World Rebirth is going to be absolute garbage, so I have no hopes for that one performing at all whatsoever. It's going to make the most money coming out. Of course, until Avatar 3 comes out at the end of the year, which is another Disney-owned project, so realistically, they don't give a shit when it comes to quality, okay? They just put the things that are on the screen that either reminds people of things or it makes them feel things because they look at the pretty colors that are on the screen. They will continue to double and triple down in that respect, so that's why they're just going to go ahead and silo this Snow White failure and then just drag Rachel Zegler back out because she hasn't done the rounds quite yet on other Star Wars and, Marvel projects. I still think she's going to be Jubilee or she's going to be some member of the X-Men. You fucking well better believe that. But no, as for pausing all live action remakes because of the failure of Snow White, Marvel didn't pause their movies. They didn't make a meaningful pivot when it comes to storytelling because of the failure of the Marvels. And now we have the comparisons because we have a long enough time scale. And yeah, Snow White is going to end up underperforming the Marvels, which I did not think in my wildest dreams was going to end up being the case. Disney's Snow White is on pace to perform worse than the Marvels. It has only grossed $184.9 million globally compared to the Marvels' $199.7 million. And yeah, just going back to the full box office totals, and yeah, we can run down a couple of dailies here, but I'm more concerned about the weekend total, which we'll check in here for a second. But yes, 194 million, okay, at the worldwide box office as compared to the numbers as they have it here. Box Office Mojo has it at, I think, 201 or 204, something like that. But the numbers for the past 2 years, they have been steadfast in this 199.7 worldwide box office. And you take a look at that domestic box office, 84.5, just about flat. I guess you can give Snow White, the tip on that, but its international box office, didn't end up working out all that well. But looking at the weekend totals, okay, and that fifth weekend right there, when it, right after that, it just essentially fell off a cliff when it came to, weekend performance, okay, fell out of the top 15 or something like that. Heading into the busy holiday season, 2023, obviously, like Avatar and shit like that came out then. So it was going to be eaten up, whatever. Is that Avatar or was that 2022? And yeah, Avatar came out 2022. Actually, literally nothing came out during holiday season 2023. It just ended up losing screens out of sheer apathy. But 1.3 million in its fifth weekend compared to Snow White's fifth weekend. 1.2. Oof, it's donezo, brother. And looking ahead to the future, its last real chance to push towards that 200 million global haul, comparing it against the Marvels, it's going to be our last shot to have any meaningful number of theaters that are out there. But unless Disney, out of pure spite, keeps you in theaters a lot longer than you're profitable for, you are going to end up taking the throne from the Marvels as the biggest flop under the Disney umbrella in a decade. And when we finally get confirmation for how much this abomination cost, this fictitious number for a production budget somewhere in $270 million, we'll get confirmation on that and how big of a disaster that ultimately ends up being. Funny, the Marvels was also had to have a $270 million budget. What did that end up being? Oh yeah, exactly. We'll be able to see apples to apples comparison, what ends up happening. So the only thing that's left to do in regards to Snow White is the crying. The only thing that we're left waiting for with bated breath is the admission from the Access media that that was a catastrophic disaster that Rachel Zegler caused. But I think the only thing that we're likely to get, instead of just hand waving away and nobody remembers it, and why are you even talking about Snow White at this point in time, is when Rachel gets back on social media and starts blaming everybody but herself for that failure. Can't wait. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.